Have you ever wondered why so many people spend their lives struggling to escape poverty, while others seem to find the path to prosperity with ease? Imagine this. You work, you strive, but it seems like it's never enough. The Bible reveals some powerful truths about money and the hidden traps that can keep you stuck in that cycle. And the most surprising thing is that many of these traps are embedded in the beliefs and habits we carry without even realizing it. But today, we are going to break those barriers. We will talk about the 12 traps that are blocking your financial freedom and how biblical wisdom can liberate you from them. These are not just financial lessons. They are divine principles designed to transform your life in every sense. You will learn what makes the difference between prosperity and a constant financial struggle, with real examples from great men of faith like Abraham, Solomon, and Daniel. If this knowledge already makes sense to you, subscribe to the channel now. We are on a journey to reach 10,000 subscribers by the end of December, and with that, to bring God's Word and help more people prosper. So, stop everything you are doing, eliminate any distractions, and prepare for a transformation that only divine wisdom can bring. You will discover powerful truths to change your financial life, and by the end, you will learn how to achieve true prosperity according to the Word of God. Do not miss a single detail, because God has something special for you. For many, life seems like a great puzzle with disconnected pieces that, no matter how hard they try, never form a clear picture. And it's no wonder, without a defined vision, it's like rowing a boat without a destination, fighting against the tide and feeling lost in a sea of doubt. The Bible shows us the importance of having a purpose, and Proverbs 29 verse 18 warns us that where there is no vision, the people perish. God gave us the privilege of setting goals, of dreaming of a life of abundance, but without a North Star, how can financial freedom be achieved? How can you build a life of prosperity and meaning? Abraham is the living example of what it means to live with purpose. God gave him a grandiose promise, but he did not see everything happen at once. On the contrary, Abraham had to walk by faith, without seeing the final destination. How many of us are ready to trust even when we don't have all the answers? Abraham moved forward, believing that God would guide his steps. And by doing so, he was blessed with riches and a prosperity that impacted not only his life, but also future generations. That is the power of living with a clear purpose, even without seeing the complete path. Imagine the impact of living with a vision centered on God. Having a purpose is what gives us the strength to face difficulties, to overcome the financial and emotional obstacles that life puts in our path. It is that certainty that moves us toward financial independence with intelligence, to make money work for us and not the other way around. When you live with a purpose, you are no longer a hostage to circumstances or financial pressures. You become the protagonist of your own story, knowing that God walks by your side. You might be asking yourself, but how do I find that purpose? How do I get a vision that guides me? The answer is closer than you think. God, who is the source of all wisdom, wants to reveal the path to you. You just have to be willing to listen to Him, to put your trust in Him. By doing so, you will see that each step will be illuminated. And just like Abraham, you will discover that true prosperity is not only in material riches, but in the peace and security that come from living for a greater purpose. How many people do you know who dedicate their entire lives to a job, thinking that there they will find financial security? This is common, but it can be a dangerous illusion. Often, employment becomes a kind of crutch on which they lean, but which does not guarantee true stability. In the Bible, Solomon shows us that security is not in a steady job, but in the wisdom and understanding that God gives us. In Proverbs 10 verse 22, we understand that it is the blessing of God that brings wealth, without adding sorrow to it, which means that real security does not come from a salary but from trust in God and His direction. Solomon is the clear example of one who sought that wisdom. When he had the opportunity to ask for anything from God, he did not choose riches or power, but wisdom to lead. And it was that choice that blessed him, bringing both riches and peace to his kingdom. Solomon understood that by trusting in God and in divine wisdom, he could have not only security but lasting prosperity. This is an invitation to rethink our relationship with work and to see beyond traditional employment, understanding that true financial independence comes from a trust founded in God. Now, think about your life. What does security mean to you? Is it depending on a job? Is it fearing the loss of a fixed income? Solomon teaches us that instead of depending solely on a job, we should seek the divine wisdom that enables us to make intelligent decisions. Working is important, but living in fear of losing your job is living with a false sense of security. Instead, we must learn to make money work for us, to invest, and to build a path of prosperity that does not depend solely on one job. Perhaps it is time to abandon that anchor and seek something greater, a life of trust in God and in the wisdom He grants us. Like Solomon, we can ask God for direction for our finances, our careers, and our investments. This means having a long-term vision, a millionaire mindset that understands that security is in the hands of the one who sustains all things. Thus, our financial security will be guaranteed not by work, but by trust in God. Seeking wealth solely for status or greed is a dangerous path, and the Bible warns us about this. In 1 Timothy 6 verse 10, we read that the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. When wealth becomes a goal without a greater purpose, it quickly loses meaning and distances us from God. True prosperity comes when money is a tool to fulfill a purpose. Wealth without an intention guided by God can make us fall into traps and forget the values that truly matter, leaving us empty. Daniel is a great example of someone who never put wealth as a priority in his life. Even when he was taken as a prisoner to Babylon, he maintained a firm purpose and did not compromise his values for status or material gain. His focus was always on serving God and living with integrity, which led him to positions of great influence and prosperity, even in a foreign land. Daniel shows that true wealth is not in the amount of goods we possess, but in the impact we make and the integrity with which we live. Perhaps you also feel that the pursuit of money has dominated your life. But ask yourself, why? What is the real reason for wanting more money? Money itself is a tool, and without a greater purpose, it loses its value. Daniel reminds us that by staying focused on God and on a divine purpose, prosperity and financial independence become a natural consequence. This mindset allows you to invest more wisely and build a wealth that goes beyond the material. The secret of the rich and of true prosperity is in aligning their resources with a greater purpose. Do not let money be the Lord of your life, but make it a servant to fulfill what God has for you. Daniel achieved financial independence and respect because he never stopped serving God. And you? Are you ready to change the way you see money and start building a true wealth guided by purpose? Generosity is a biblical principle that brings more blessings than many can imagine. When we live only to accumulate, we fall into the trap of spiritual poverty, clinging to what we have and fearing to lose it all. Jesus taught us that it is more blessed to give than to receive, from Acts 20, verse 35. And this is not just about money, it is about time, love, and attention. Generosity frees us from the bonds of financial anxiety and allows us to experience a freedom that goes beyond the material. Giving is in itself an act of faith, as it recognizes that God is our true provider. Abraham is a notable example of generosity. At a crucial moment, he decided to offer the best part of the land to his nephew Lot, showing that he trusted in God and not in material possessions. Abraham understood that the act of giving would not diminish his blessings, but would multiply them. He knew that his prosperity came from God, and that is why he could part with goods without fear. This gesture of generosity not only blessed him, but also reinforced his relationship with God, demonstrating his faith and trust in him. Perhaps you also find it difficult to part with what you possess, worried about losing financial control. But think of generosity as a seed that you plant, an attitude that, at the right time, brings back multiplied fruits. When we give with joy, whoever it may be to, we are following the path of divine prosperity. The Bible teaches us that the hand that gives is the one that receives. The more you share, the more space you open for God to bless your life with abundance. Generosity, then, is not just an action but a mindset of wealth and prosperity. Abraham understood this and was blessed in all areas of his life. Now, imagine what could happen if you lived this same truth, trusting in God as your source and giving from the heart. When we recognize that God is the owner of everything, we can live with a detached spirit and experience true financial freedom. Modern society often measures people's worth by what they possess, but the Bible warns us that true identity cannot be found in riches. Jesus taught that a person's life does not consist in the abundance of their possessions, from Luke 12, verse 15. Trusting in riches to define your value is to build your life on unstable ground. Possessions come and go, but our identity in God is immutable and eternal. When you understand that your value is in God, you no longer need material goods to feel secure and valued. Solomon, one of the richest and wisest men in the Bible, understood this. He lived surrounded by luxury and power, but he knew that none of that was what truly mattered. In Ecclesiastes, Solomon reflects on the vanity of riches and concludes that true value lies in fearing God and following His commandments. Solomon teaches us that security and peace do not come from accumulating goods, but from a connection with the Creator. Possessions are fleeting, but wisdom and spirituality are eternal riches. Think about the times you may have sought value in something you own, like the car you drive, the house you have, or your bank balance. These things bring comfort, but they cannot give purpose and happiness. God created us to be much more than owners of material goods. Our identity as children of God is what makes us valuable. By placing your trust in God, you begin to build a financial empire that goes beyond the visible, something that no one can steal or take away from you. Like Solomon, you can begin to see wealth for what it really is, a tool, not an identity. When we learn to see our possessions as temporary resources, we can enjoy a lasting and true peace. In the end, genuine prosperity lies in knowing who you are in God, not in what you possess. This changes everything and is the first step to living a truly abundant and financial freedom. Education and learning are powerful keys to financial freedom, but how often do we neglect this truth? The Bible teaches us that the wise listen and add to their learning, from Proverbs 1 verse 5. The pursuit of knowledge is essential for anyone who wishes to prosper. And this is not limited to formal education. It is about acquiring wisdom, learning to manage finances, and understanding how money can work in our favor. Whoever invests in knowledge is building a solid foundation for the future. Daniel is an inspiring biblical example of someone who valued learning, even in a strange and hostile environment. In Babylon, he dedicated himself to study and quickly stood out among the wise men. Daniel understood that education not only opened doors but was a way to honor God. And as a result, he was considered 10 times wiser than all the others. This shows that by seeking learning with diligence, we reap fruits that set us apart and bring us closer to true prosperity. Perhaps you think that education is something expensive or out of your reach, but remember, learning goes beyond the classroom. With technology, we have access to a world of information, from financial management to intelligent investments. When we set out to learn continuously, we are actually preparing ourselves to achieve financial independence. It is like planting seeds of knowledge that will soon bring fruits of wealth and stability. Like Daniel, it is time for you to invest in yourself, explore new forms of education, and open your mind to what God has to teach you. Neglecting learning is a trap into which many fall, but you can choose to follow the path of growth. Every new piece of knowledge brings you closer to financial freedom and the ability to make money work for you. And so, with God guiding every step, you will see how the doors of prosperity open. Excellence is a divine principle that generates lasting fruits. Doing something halfway, without commitment, is a trap that prevents prosperity. Colossians 3 verse 23 instructs us, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord." When we dedicate ourselves with excellence, we not only stand out, but we also honor God. Excellence in work, in relationships, and in life is the path to a prosperity that goes beyond money. It is the path to a full and meaningful life. Daniel is a clear example of someone who practiced excellence in everything he did. He was recognized for his competence and faithfulness, so much so that the king himself trusted him with great responsibilities. Daniel did not settle for doing the minimum. He dedicated himself with effort, and that is why he was elevated to positions of great influence and prosperity. His excellence distinguished him in a competitive and hostile environment. Imagine the impact that this same attitude of excellence can have in your life. It is not about perfection, but about striving to give the best of oneself. How many times have laziness or a lack of commitment prevented us from reaching our full potential? It is easy to fall into the temptation of doing the minimum, but that is a trap that only delays our growth. God calls us to be excellent, to dedicate ourselves from the heart to everything we do. Like Daniel, this posture opens doors and places us on a path of prosperity that only excellence can provide. By practicing excellence, you are not only seeking financial success, you are creating a solid foundation for all areas of your life. Being excellent is more than working hard. It is working with purpose. It is understanding that your effort has eternal value. And like Daniel, you will discover that true prosperity comes from committing to the best, guided by the certainty that God rewards those who honor their talents with dedication and care. There is a common view that wealth is something bad, but the Bible teaches us that money itself is a tool, neither good nor bad. Deuteronomy 8 verse 18 reminds us that it is God who gives us the power to acquire wealth. The problem is not in the money, but in how it is used. If wealth is treated as an idol, it becomes dangerous. But when it is seen as a blessing, it becomes a means to do good and help our neighbor. Wealth, when guided by a divine purpose, is an expression of the goodness and provision of God. Abraham is a great example of someone who was blessed with many riches and yet maintained a life of faith and integrity. He not only possessed material goods, but used those resources to fulfill God's will. Abraham's prosperity was a testimony to God's faithfulness, and he knew how to manage his fortune in a way that it did not become an obstacle but a channel of blessings. This teaches us that when we have a correct vision about money, it becomes a tool to achieve a greater purpose. How many people live trapped in the idea that money is the root of all evil? In reality, it is the love of money, and not money itself, that the Bible warns against as dangerous. If you see wealth as something bad, you may be limiting the blessings that God desires to pour into your life. The real question is how you will use what you possess. God desires you to be a good steward, someone who uses resources for good, to help, and to expand His kingdom on earth. Abraham shows us that prosperity can walk alongside faith and humility. When we understand that God is the owner of everything and that we are only administrators, we free ourselves from limiting views about money. Wealth then ceases to be a burden and becomes an opportunity to impact lives, a reflection of God's goodness. And you, are you ready to see wealth as a blessing and a responsibility before God? Debt is one of the great traps that financially imprisons many people. The Bible teaches us in Romans 13, verse 8, "Let no debt remain outstanding, except the continuing debt to love one another." This advice alerts us to the danger of unnecessary debts, especially those that arise from the anxiety of wanting everything at the moment. When we go into debt without purpose, we are only adding a financial and emotional weight to our lives, something that takes away our peace and prevents us from achieving true financial independence. Solomon, the wisest man of all time, spoke about prudence in relation to debt. He taught us in Proverbs that debt should be undertaken with caution and responsibility. Solomon knew that debt itself is not the problem. The problem is taking it on without a clear plan of how to honor it. Debts can be useful tools to invest in assets and grow financially, but this requires wisdom and discipline. Going into debt on impulse is an open door to ruin. If you have ever spent sleepless nights thinking about bills to pay, you know the weight that debt brings. Accumulated debts without purpose create constant anguish, and that is exactly what the Bible wants to help us avoid. The financial secret of the rich is to use credit intelligently, investing in things that will bring a return, such as education, businesses, or properties. Making money work for you instead of just using it to pay off debts is one of the essential steps to financial freedom. Think of your finances as a construction project. Every decision is a brick. When we accumulate debt without purpose, we are building on sand. But with planning, every investment becomes a solid foundation. Solomon encourages us to be wise and prudent, to think before we act, and to remember that true blessings come from a life of balance and purpose. That is the secret to building wealth without drowning in meaningless commitments. Modern society seems to value relentless work, as if rest were a luxury for a few. But God, in His wisdom, taught us the importance of rest through the principle of the Sabbath in Exodus 20, verses 8 to 10. Neglecting rest and balance is a trap that leads to exhaustion, both physical and mental. Rest is essential to keep the mind and spirit in harmony. Daniel is an example of someone who valued balance in his life. Even in the midst of intense responsibilities and external pressures, he prayed 3 times a day, staying connected to God and renewing his strength. Daniel knew that excellence at work did not mean sacrificing his inner peace. On the contrary, he found balance by dedicating himself to what truly mattered. This practice of pausing and connecting with God was his source of strength and wisdom to face daily challenges. Perhaps you also feel pressured to always be busy, as if that were the only way to achieve financial freedom. But the truth is that rest renews our ability to work intelligently. Neglecting rest not only harms health but also affects finances, as a tired mind makes wrong decisions. Resting is ultimately an act of faith. It is trusting that God is in control and that our value is not measured by the number of hours worked. By finding this balance, you will discover that rest is a source of inspiration and creativity. When we rest, we allow God to renew our strength and give us new ideas. Like Daniel, it is possible to maintain excellence without sacrificing peace. The balance between work and rest is one of the greatest secrets of the rich and wise, a practice that allows one to prosper without losing the meaning of life. Many seek to achieve financial prosperity by relying only on their own strength, but the Bible reminds us that true prosperity comes from God. In Matthew 6, verse 33, Jesus teaches us, "But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." To despise the power of faith and trust in God is to renounce the source that truly sustains our lives. Without God, even the most dedicated effort can result in frustration, for it is He who enables us to be prosperous in all areas. Abraham, known as the father of faith, is the living example of what it means to trust fully in God. He left everything behind without knowing where he was going, simply trusting in the promise that God had made to him. That unwavering faith led him to achieve not only material wealth but a spiritual prosperity that impacted generations. Abraham shows us that by trusting in God, we receive much more than we can imagine. Faith is not just a resource for difficult times. It is the foundation upon which we build our entire lives. Perhaps you also feel the pressure to solve everything by yourself, but you should know that putting your trust in God transforms the journey. The Bible tells us that God cares for us like a loving father, and He knows exactly what we need. When we surrender our financial worries to Him, we find a peace that the world cannot offer. This does not mean not acting, but acting with the confidence that God is at the forefront, opening doors and guiding our steps. When we learn to live by faith, our vision of prosperity changes completely. We begin to see money as a means and not as an end. Like Abraham, you can experience a life of abundance that goes beyond possessions. Trust in God leads us to a level of financial freedom that does not depend on circumstances but on our relationship with the Creator. And that is a wealth that nothing can destroy. There is a common thought that wealth necessarily corrupts, but the Bible offers us a different vision. Jesus taught that riches can, in fact, be used to do good and serve God. In Luke 16, verse 9, he advises using material resources to make friends and build something that transcends the material. The issue is not the money itself, but the heart of the one who possesses it. Wealth can be a blessing when it is managed with wisdom, justice, and generosity, reflecting the character of God. Solomon is a biblical example of someone who used his wealth to serve the people and honor God. He built the temple and strengthened Israel, showing that possessions, when used well, are a powerful tool for blessing. Solomon knew that wealth was not the final purpose, but a means to fulfill God's plan. The Bible shows us that instead of judging wealth, we should reflect on how it is used. Money in the right hands can transform lives and bring a prosperity that glorifies God. Think about the wealthy people you may know, or even the perceptions you may have had about wealth. We often associate money with selfish behaviors, but are we not generalizing? Jesus teaches us that what matters is not the value in the bank account, but what is in the heart. Money can be a powerful resource to change the world, as long as it is guided by solid values and divine principles. Therefore, instead of seeing wealth as something bad, see it as an opportunity to serve. Solomon inspires us to see prosperity with a new perspective. By seeking wisdom and using money for good, he teaches us that true wealth lies in living with purpose and generosity. It is possible to be prosperous and just, blessing the lives of others and spreading the love of God. And now, imagine the impact that you too can have by transforming your vision of wealth and using it according to the divine will. You have come this far, absorbing every biblical teaching on financial traps. Now is the time to apply these principles in your life, allowing the Word of God to transform not only your finances, but your entire journey. Every topic we discussed is an invitation to change your perspective and to trust in God as your true source of provision and security. Imagine the peace and confidence that will come from living these principles, knowing that God is by your side. And to delve even deeper into this wisdom, I invite you to watch the video Billionaires Who Were Poor Teach You How to Earn Money According to the Bible. Don't look for a job. In this video, you will see powerful lessons on prosperity and how men of faith transformed their lives, even coming from difficult contexts. It is an essential complement for you to understand even more about how God desires to bless you. Remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and activate the notifications to continue learning about biblical prosperity. May God bless you in all areas of your life.